car!
Wait, this is my tabernacle!
Let's go! Get in the car! Come on!
Hello gamers, and welcome to yet another analysis and review as we are rushing headlong and knee deep into brand new releases. This one centres around another post-apocalyptic open world yarn, but this time set in the outback, and follows the tale of Max, mad to his friends and enemies alike, which seems appropriate going up against Metal Gear Solid 5, another multi-platform title hitting the same day, but I have looked at that already. We can look in detail at my multi-PC, PS4 and Xbox One copies after managing to squeeze in some hours with each. Along with nearly completing the game, I have a good feel for the story and certainly its visuals and soundtrack. It follows a similar path of the original Mel Gibson movies minus the law-abiding part at the start, but it really is linked with the new reboot Fury Road, although not based on that movie's plot. It won't win any awards for being a groundbreaker regarding story, but it has all the right ingredients to work. Vast open world, check. Rugged and troubled anti-hero with an up-to-date gym membership, check. A selection of vehicles that can be customizable, cool, simple, elegant and Batman Shadow of Mordor-like combat system, varied weapons, scavenging and character personalising, improving RPG type elements, stuff to blow up, crush and kill, they're all a check. Maps are unlocked by using a balloon system to get a bird's eye view of the area and sync up, a similar structure to Warner's open world release last year of Shadow of Mordor, and it's not the first time this familiarity rears up. It's not a bad thing. This is all encompassed within a very beautiful Australian setting that allows Avalanche to show off its skills and in-house engine, backed up with the Havoc plugin to handle physics. This is a similar engine that powers the forthcoming Just Cause 3 and is the team's own work designed around modern hardware, dynamic emergent play and open worlds. Here the setting and action is far more subdued, with Max not jumping from a plane while attacking a base with a rocket launcher using a missile as a surfboard. That is not to say the action does not ramp up here, as it surely does. Instead we get a very open and barren wasteland, from sand billowing across sunset vistas to moonlight excursions into dank caves. The engine as much as the art team deliver an accurate and at times foreboding setting, with the team calling its engine a clustered renderer for Just Cause 3, which is similar to other methods like tiled deferred rendering or forward plus rendering, a rose by any other name. This is growing in popularity this generation as it solves and improves many problem areas and options that either standard forward or deferred cannot on their own. Seen in use already from the Order 1886, Forza Horizon 2 and the upcoming Star Wars Battlefront. It allows far more light sources per scene, along with decoupling the lighting pass from the geometry, enabling enhanced lighting features like PBR, and these can create more believable worlds and materials. In 2014 the team gave a talk on the engine, and then it was a simple deferred engine with an FXAA solution. That seems to have changed due to or because of the cancellation of the last gen versions and its push into 2015, nearly a year later than its originally intended launch. This retooling looks to mean that they've implemented the clustered version of that engine into this one, which its biggest benefits are the fact that by their own tests it gives 2 times the performance benefit over a standard deferred renderer. Throw in additional anti-aliasing solutions like MSAA and that figure dramatically increases. Aside that, the game obviously supports the same benefits as deferred rendering, which includes lots of lights and shadow casting light sources. Car headlights cast shadows over rocks, walls, people, and this all makes everything feel more grounded. The same goes for torches, and I love this aspect now of games, as this not only is an improvement in visuals and presentation, but also in the immersion and logic of a game. Seeing a shadow in the distance or others can affect both the atmosphere and gameplay. The Metro gained from the talented team over at 4A really excelled at this, and I hope it soon becomes the standard. The Havoc integrated physics enable it to deliver a destructible environment procedural animation systems best displayed in the very visceral and impactful combat system, with it delivering a weighty one that sees each blow and kick carrying power as they fly, fall and crumble, even more so in Fury mode. It can almost knock you off your seat. This extends to the kinematics as you see Max adjust his walk, climb and even his knee jolt as he runs through the sand. Cars explode into a particle shower with parts falling off as you shoot, ram or pinpoint sections to disable it, adding a tactical element to highway battles as taking out tyres is quicker than wearing a heavy armoured truck or car down. The only minor niggle is the fact that the enemies become static and no longer considered collision models shortly after they are defeated. Along with objects disappearing, this happens on max settings on PC just the same. Hardly a showstopper, but noticeable nonetheless. Later, as you upgrade, you could get to use the harpoon gun, which is very handy for quickly destroying encampments or simply teaching a naughty sniper a lesson not to be such a drag. But the engine traits also help in another change for this game. The shift to a high dynamic range allows a PBR pipeline to be built, which combined with the deferred shading method means that objects can have their own unique properties and thus are represented in a much more accurate way. Although they are heavily stylized for its chosen cartoon style aesthetic over photorealism here. This is helped by the game also having a very good texture budget with the stitching on shirt materials or the decals on faces. Even the stablemate of a good quality beard is all delivered and presented well here. The shading work in the game is exemplary and along with its HDR pipeline allows a much more organic and vivid colour palette to shine. It is one of the most colourful games seen in a while, from pale blues, burnt orange sunsets to deep red tones at sunrise. It uses its range and colours well to deliver a believable representation of the Australian countryside. It is kept even more attractive thanks to a decent use of AF, which looks to be around 10 or 12 on both consoles. PC can max out at 16. And although you get some distant shimmer from oblique objects on the distant ground, this can come from its use of parallax occlusion mapping that adds more detail and depth to the land as you wander and explore, an effect present on both consoles along with the option on PC. Note here on AMD GPUs this is slightly buggy as the grid can be clearly seen here on both GPUs, which hopefully will get patched. A great use and touch is the sand footprint, which although simple looks effective in play. This along with the AF all help deliver a good looking game and keeps the view detailed, clean and crisp most of the time. Adaptive tessellation is also lightly used in conjunction with these to create some nice rugged areas, and overall this works well. It delivers a very full and undulating terrain. Elsewhere, the high light source count impresses in heavier action scenes along with a great particle system that improves the battle's collisions and explosions. With fire having an almost liquid simulation effect, they don't like the smoke, it's just high resolution sprites, alpha blended, but looks convincing. But particles are used in addition to this in the fire. As cocktail bombs land, they all have their own point light source, as does the fire and smoke, which itself is very dense and affected by the wind. Elsewhere, the engine does not scrimp on post effects with some nice volumetric light and crepuscular rays adding atmosphere from a setting sun over dunes to peering through a Pierce tanker's hull. Dust particles float in the light, sadly not an individual particle system, but alpha transparent textures that work well. It allows occlusion shadows to penetrate across the horizon from towers or rocks. It also works within the dust and sound clouds as they receive shadows through them. On PC, this needs to be set at high or very high, with consoles looking to run the highest level, and if not, the difference is almost impossible to see between any of them. Both depth of field and motion blur appear and are as equally well implemented at the same high setting as PC, with a high resolution resolve on depth of field that includes bokeh to enhance its filmic flair. This is depth aware with a focal length being used in foreground camera shots or to add scale in fight scenes. The lower option simply uses a plain Gaussian filter applied to the scene uniformly with the same depth calculated parts just being smudged. Motion blur is of both camera and per object origin and is very impressive for both. It tracks arms, legs and bodies well, and in all the game's real-time cutscenes it just adds to its offline CGI looks and still looks great at 60 FPS on PC. This is also due to its motion capped animation system and is well blended within sets in game, best demonstrated during the game's combat system, which also flaunts the game's great post effect suite. This also includes the very in vogue chromatic aberration touch, but is well presented throughout the game, adding a fringed edge that sits well within the world setting and industrial apocalyptic design. In cutscenes with a stinging sun-drenched colour, it blends well and does not look ill-placed, whilst also adding IQ benefits, but some may not like its resolve at all, and this game does have a very heavy post-process look to it most of the time. Speaking of this, it looks to be using some form of post-processing solution, and although it runs at a native display of 1080 on both machines and PC, it can have some heavy shimmer on specular highlights, thin areas and on the far geometry and textures in the middle distance. It never ruins the image, but the PS4 seems to run another pass with more coverage that can leave some textures looking slightly more blurred than on Xbox One and the PC. But the game still does have at times a noisy IQ in places, but a native display on both consoles does help. Both in-game and the very impressive real-time scenes that flow seamlessly into and out of gameplay, aside of fade to black at the end, which is a shame but only a few frames, they suffer at various levels of this aliasing. Sadly on PC you cannot add more options unless you want to experiment with some driver options or mods. Sound is what you would call good but not as far reaching as the visual side of the engine. The main title track is effective in invoking the mood merged with its titled credits. In-game sounds all have a suitable range of gunshot, explosions and engine roar from the V6 or V8 monsters that sound authentic. What else could an Aussie anti-hero drive but a V8?
Lost! We have the car. We need to go. Do you know the safe place?
Impacts and punches are very good, and deep bass that in conjunction with the animation systems allows the fight scenes to feel aggressively accurate. Voice acting is good and great to hear Australian voices kept for the main character and others in the game, which is very appreciated and true to the story's roots. Max, played by Australian actor Brent Foster, not only lent his voice, but the actual character looks modelled on him. Not unsurprising for the motion captured cinematics. His delivery is good and suitably curt and gruff in keeping with the character, and he carries the in-game and cinematics well, delivering a man haunted by his past and lack or lust of the future. Other characters like Chumbucket are the right mix of disturbingly creepy but endearingly loyal, more like a slightly less disturbed Gollum. Yet another vibe from Shadow of Mordor creeps in.
Back.
But we've got all we need. Why stall our work on the magnum opus?
It's not for you to understand.
I see. You have your secret reasons. I'll follow you, because I think fate favors old chum. And you need both of us.
What is not so ambiguous is its performance. This really is an example of how to deliver right on target and within budget. Check out my First Contact PC and console performance analysis to see more of this. From over an hour, variously analysed footage across 6 platforms and specs in heavy action, real-time cinematics, fast-paced driving or exploration, it never really drops a beat. On the PS4, aside the beginning sequence where it drops for a short moment, outside of that it holds a locked 30 throughout cinematics and gameplay pretty much all the time. A few bugs aside which I'll mention in a moment. In hindsight, the Xbox One version runs very close, but it struggles more in the cutscenes. It tends to tear at the top section of the screen when it does do this, and drop a few frames here and there, but it's nothing to really concern yourself about, and only tends to happen on some of the bigger scenes in the cutscenes. The intro sequence is probably one of the biggest ones you'll see so far, and certainly from what I've tested. In play and with a very good streaming and I/O process, it does not dip, stutter or fall at all, holding a rock solid 30 on consoles, which combined with the high sample and abundant radial and per object motion blur delivers a smooth and solid performer that is a poster boy for stable open world games this generation. When we've had some others not quite so solid, no matter how hard you seem to stress the engine, in chases, explosions, huge brawls and slow motion bokeh shots, it carries on without a sweat on both consoles, with the Xbox One being ever so slightly more prone to stutters when driving, but very small and even rarer. Well done Avalanche on that side. The PC release is equally as accomplished, handled by the team direct. It runs great on all machines, even the APU does a great job of running a very pared back option, but pretty solid performer. With the consoles having the max setting on all options aside the obvious draw distance, which looks to be on high for geometry and normal setting for debris. The only other minor change is obviously the shadows is one notch down, but it's really hard to notice. So what you get on consoles is nigh on identical with the PC aside the LOD and frame rate, which runs around the 40s on my 750 machine and much nearer 60 on the 7870. Obviously the GT 970 machine can run in far excess of that. With some downsampling thrown in, it allows it to have the cleanest image with a solid performance. Contrary to my last video, it does actually use up to 6 cores quite extensively on the PC, although the balance is quite low in cutscenes, but in gameplay it can generally run around 30% of the 6th and 5th cores, and then outside of that touches the other ones slightly, but it doesn't really use any more than 6, and it doesn't really need to. It seems to be a very efficient game on the CPU cores. The game does have a few, and I must stress, rare bugs. I managed to break free of the world on PC as here. along with the camera issues mid-battle, and these happened on all machines. Also later in the game it can have an obvious bug that causes the frame rate and entire engine to stutter and fall like you are in slow motion. I have not captured a full worst case scenario of this. As I say, it is rare. Also, the day one patch does fix some popping and glitching of textures on both PS4 and more so the Xbox One as seen here. Aside these very rare occurrences, it is a real winner on all platforms, with the PC winning out across both consoles not only due to its higher frame rate, but also being £20, it is nearly half the price of the console release. No matter which platform you play, it is an enjoyable and stable romp. The game can deliver exquisitely beautiful views at times as the remote and desolate plains span out before you. When a sandstorm or full storm blow in, it's a real visual treat. This is also true of the gameplay. The starting few hours feels good as you explore, scrap and scavenge for fuel and parts to repair or bling up your ride, from the choice of which you start your magnum opus. Learning new tricks as you go, opening the map, and the world as it becomes more travelled, you drive, scavenge, fight, repair, and repeat. But after this, like Shadow of Mordor, the novelty can wear off, leaving you less involved in completing this tale of revenge and salvation of the Silent Plains. One that is not entirely well explained from the start, and needs to be learned through longer play, which just adds to its slightly more difficult attempts to hook the player within its narrative. But the connection between Max and Chumbucket, along with man's best friend, is one of the better and more natural emerged friendships, as you meet more characters with varying levels of fetch quests and task allocation in trade for more parts, etc. is a familiar one. As far as a demo of the engine itself and its competence on now-gen machines and PC, it is a real testament to Avalanche and a good indicator of what the improved version will deliver in Just Cause 3. As always, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. If so, please hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate each and every one of you that does. If you have any comments, leave them below. I will reply as often as I can, and I really appreciate it. If you do subscribe, you'll obviously get first notification of new material as I put them on YouTube. I'm off to while some more time away in the open barren land with Max as my companion. You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you very soon on the next one.